Well, thanks for staying with us here on Morning Live. And now we're rounding up stories that made headlines on the African continent, and starting with Ethiopia. And they, of course, Ethiopian airline setting on a course where they are running the Nigerian airline, Chamisa, filing to court, and all of those stories. We're going to talk about all of that with our guest this morning, Victor Kgomoeswana. Victor, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you, Sakina. Good to see you on TV.
So, Victor, Ethiopian Airlines, let's start with them. Because they seem to be really taking things on, and they have now taken advantage of the new peace accord between Ethiopia and Eritrea. They've flown there now, and also seemingly acquiring stakes elsewhere on the continent and flying all over the place.
It's an understatement to say they seem to be doing well. They are Africa's best run, most profitable, most successful airline, and they are government owned. They owned a stake in Zambian Airlines. They own a stake in Malawian Airlines. They bought a stake in the airline of Chad, I think. And now they were in line to run Nigerian Airways. But the aviation authority, the aviation minister of Nigeria has been denying that they are not in line to do that. But if they were to look for any airline in Africa that has an experience of running a government-owned entity, that Ethiopian Airlines would have no contest. Kenya Airways used to be, but Kenya is running through its own turbulence. So today, as we speak, the best airline in Africa on profit, on revenue, on growth, and on how it's run is Ethiopian Airlines by a long shot.
And one cannot help but wonder, as SAA, our own struggling SAA, what
you
can
won't
we
break
learn?
my heart right now, because
No, I'm not
comparing
trying to do
Ethiopian
that.
Airlines and SAA
I'm looking for lessons.
I
I'm
know.
looking for what we can learn from them.
No, in fact, we should go to them and ask them how they do it, because they are 100% government owned. They don't have any shareholder. So whenever people talk about privatization of SAA as the solution, I say, but why don't you just go to Addis and ask Ethiopian Airlines how they do it?
So that's definitely one to keep an eye on, and it would be interesting to see if we actually do take that step as South Africa and the leadership at SAA to go and find out.
We're going to go to Europe first, we're going to go to US
first
instead of going to African examples. We're used to that.
Yeah, well, hopefully someone is listening, and maybe they will take a look at what's happening up with Ethiopia Airlines. But let's move on to Mali. They, of course, had elections this week.
Yeah, another 70-year-old winning election, 73-year-old. Is the incumbent president. He won the re-election. Remember, it's funny, isn't it, that we didn't speak about them as much as Zimbabwean elections, considering they took place on July 29th. The day before, they couldn't get a winner right away. There were 24 candidates, including the president, Keita, and then his former finance minister, Cisse, who got about 18%. They went into a runoff. He got 33%. And I think President Keita got 64%. The opposition leader, unfortunately, is already saying, the elections were rigged. He's calling his supporters to go to the streets. Very tragic always. Although I can't dispute that there might have been vote rigging or any kind of fraud, it's hard to prove. And unless you can prove it conclusively, I would ask opposition leaders or people who don't win elections to stop saying, we must take to the streets to protest, because you're just going to do what happened in Kenya. People are going to get killed, and after they are killed, you shake hands with your rival, and then you say life must go on. And I ask, what happens to the people who followed you and paid the ultimate price?
And speaking of Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta this week coming up with charges against two top-ranking officials. And this was regarding that Chinese $3 billion railway project. Yes.
Something that's supposed to be a good project, right? $3 billion in investment in infrastructure is something commendable. But the National Land Commission and the Kenya Railway Corporation, the chairman of the first and the CEO of the second, were both charged with corruption, because there are allegations that they siphoned some money in sort of false, fraudulent claims of land usage and all that. But eventually the project is a good one, unfortunately built by the Chinese again, as we always do see with all the infrastructure. But I must commend President Kenyatta for cracking down on corruption, because these are things that make it difficult to, if you have a $3 billion project, it must go 100% to improving the efficiencies of the economy. As we know, the most important economy in East Africa, the biggest, very fast growing as well, and run by a president who I think has done not so badly, even with the political problems. So it's good for him that he's been cracking down, at least in his second term, trying to make sure he lives on the note that would have cleaned out some of the corruption. He's still not very well ranked in East Africa, Kenya. So it's commendable that he's doing this.
And of course, again, the comparisons are inevitable.
Yeah.
We have the whole state capture phenomenon, and where are the charges, against high-ranking officials?
Right.
So once again, we can't escape that. But, before I ask you to touch on Zimbabwe, the DRC, and what's going on in the DRC. They, of course, in the lead up to an election, they've got people coming back and coming in, political protagonists in that country. What's your take on what's currently going on there?
I wish President Kabila would let Moise Katumbi back into the DRC. Moise Katumbi ran the best province in the DRC, Katanga. He's a businessman. He's not perfect, but I think if this election is going to be contested and contested fairly, without Moise Katumbi, I would still doubt whether it's going to be level. But at least I'm pleased that Kabila is not going to go back. President Kabila is not going to run and seek re-election. He's caused a great deal of delay. Sakina, DRC,
at least not in his own name.
Yeah, well, at least he's not going to be there. I just don't like politicians who believe they are the best gift to their country, that without them, their countries cannot run. So I think the DRC is the most important economy in Africa, and because of the fact that we have had politicians clinging to power. Remember, this country got independence in 1960. They haven't had a peaceful transfer of power, ever. 1960, Sakina, way before I was born. I'm an old man now. They still haven't had a peaceful election.
Finally, just very briefly, Zimbabwe, Chamisa.
All right. I wish Chamisa would look at George Weah and say he was 39 when he ran and lost in 2005. At 51, he's president of Liberia. I think he should take a lesson. He lost the election. He's not going to get anything from the court. But, of course, if he believes he can get anything, let him go. Let's see what August 22nd does. But I wish people would stop challenging elections in courts because they never get anywhere.
Victor Kgomoeswana, always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much. And that just a quick roundup of some of the stories making headlines here on the African continent.